Games are yet to be held in Africa. It is our genuine hope that they will do someday soon. Between and beyond the Games, the Invictus Games Foundation works hard as the world's leading NGO supporting wounded, injured and sick service personnel and veterans through sport and adventurous challenge. As proven by my presence here today and by the incredible work that's taking place here in Nigeria, we operate at the political level to catalyse systemic change across a growing international movement, focusing on where the need is great, whilst maintaining support for the community we have built over the past decade. The establishment of sports recovery is not just the right thing to do, based on the enhanced recovery and rehabilitation outcomes that result from engaging in sports recovery activity. It is also a clear demonstration that leaders care for their troops. Empathy for troops, especially those who become injured, is key to the moral component of fighting power. A soldier who feels that he will be looked after and respected should he become injured is easier to recruit, easier to retain, and will work and will fight harder for his commanders. Over his tenure, and in partnership with the Invictus Games Foundation and delivery partner Africa Unconquered, General Musa has championed the development of sports recovery here in Nigeria. A series of events that captured the world's attention, initially when Nigerian service personnel secured multiple medals at 2 Invictus Games. Secondly, when Harry and Meghan, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, visited Nigeria just last year to spend time with and honour the armed forces community. And most recently, when General Musa and the Right Honourable Mr. Abubakar broke ground on the new Armed Forces Invictus Centre to support the rehabilitation of wounded personnel here in Abuja.
Today, my friends, we're exploring a groundbreaking moment that showcased the global reach and growing influence of Prince Harry's Invictus Games Foundation. In August 2025, something historic happened in Abuja, Nigeria. For the first time ever, the most senior military leaders from across the African continent gathered for the inaugural African Chiefs of Defence Summit. And right there, sharing the stage with Deputy Secretary General of the UN and Nigeria's Vice President, was a representative from the Invictus Games Foundation. This wasn't just a diplomatic courtesy, it was a recognition of how Prince Harry's vision has evolved into a truly global movement for military recovery and rehabilitation. Let's paint the picture of just how significant this summit was. General Christopher Musa of Nigeria hosted this 3-day event, bringing together senior officers from 39 African nations. Think about that for a moment. 39 nations, their most senior military leaders, all gathered to address shared priorities in defence, security, and most importantly for our story today, the welfare of their service personnel. This wasn't just another military conference. Africa faces unique security challenges that transcend borders, from transnational terrorism to maritime insecurity, from ethnic conflicts to climate-induced crises. The continent's military leaders recognized that these threats require not just strategic cooperation, but also a fundamental commitment to supporting the men and women who serve on the front lines of these challenges. And here's where the Invictus Games Foundation's presence becomes so meaningful. In a room filled with discussions about defense strategies and security protocols, there was also recognition that true strength comes from how we care for our wounded, injured, and sick service personnel. This represents a shift in military thinking from viewing recovery as a medical issue to understanding it as a strategic imperative. The fact that David Wiseman, the Foundation's Chief International Programs and Strategy Officer, was invited to address the opening ceremony speaks volumes. He wasn't speaking to a side panel or a breakout session, he was addressing the main gathering, immediately followed by some of the most senior political figures in Africa and the United Nations. To understand why the Invictus Games Foundation had such a prominent platform at this summit, we need to look at the incredible success story that's been unfolding in Nigeria since 2022. When Nigeria joined the Invictus community of nations 3 years ago, it marked more than just another country signing up for the Games. It represented the beginning of what could become a transformative approach to military recovery across the African continent. Nigeria's commitment has been nothing short of remarkable. From participating in their first Invictus Games in Düsseldorf 2023 to building a bespoke Armed Forces Invictus Recovery Centre, they've demonstrated what's possible when military leadership fully embraces the power of sport in recovery. This isn't just about participating in international games, it's about creating sustainable, long-term infrastructure for supporting service personnel. David Wiseman specifically highlighted Nigeria's progress during his speech, stating that their work serves as a beacon to others. This isn't diplomatic flattery, it's recognition of measurable impact. The Armed Forces Invictus Recovery Centre that Nigeria has built could potentially host future Invictus Games, making it not just a beneficiary of the movement but a leader and contributor to its growth. What makes Nigeria's approach so compelling is how they've adapted the Invictus model to meet local needs. They haven't simply imported a Western concept, they've created something that reflects their own military culture, challenges and resources while maintaining the core principles that make the Invictus Games so powerful. This success story was crucial to the Foundation's credibility at the summit. They weren't coming to Africa as outsiders with theoretical solutions, they were arriving with a proven track record of partnership and adaptation. David Wiseman's address to the summit was carefully crafted to speak to military leaders in their own language, while introducing concepts that might have seemed foreign just a few years ago. His key message was profound in its simplicity. We operate at the political level to catalyze systemic change across a growing international movement, focusing on where the need is great, whilst maintaining support for the community we have built over the past decade. Let's break this down because it reveals so much about how the Invictus Games Foundation has evolved under Prince Harry's guidance. They're not just organising sporting events, they're operating at the highest levels of government and military leadership to create systemic change. This represents a sophisticated understanding of how real transformation happens in military organisations. The phrase "where the need is great" is particularly significant. Africa faces enormous challenges in supporting wounded, injured and sick service personnel. Many African nations are dealing with ongoing conflicts, limited medical infrastructure and resource constraints that make traditional rehabilitation programs difficult to implement. The Invictus model offers something different, a cost-effective, sustainable approach that builds on the natural resilience and competitive spirit of military personnel. But perhaps most importantly, Wiseman emphasized maintaining support for the existing community. This isn't about abandoning the original Invictus nations in favor of expansion, it's about creating a global network where established programs support emerging ones, and new participants contribute to the strength of the whole movement. The timing of this message was crucial. In a room full of defence chiefs dealing with immediate security threats, the Foundation needed to demonstrate that investing in recovery programs isn't just compassionate, it's strategically smart. Healthy, supported veterans and service personnel contribute to national security in ways that go far beyond their active service. Helen Doyley, the Foundation's Chief Growth Officer, provided crucial context for understanding the significance of the summit appearance. Her observation that by contributing to the conversations at the African Chiefs of Defence Summit 2025, the Invictus Games Foundation marked an important step in expanding dialogue on how recovery programs can be shaped to meet local needs, reveals the Foundation's sophisticated approach to international expansion. This isn't about imposing a one-size-fits-all model on different cultures and military traditions. Instead, it's about creating a framework flexible enough to adapt to local needs while maintaining the core principles that make the Invictus approach so effective. This represents a mature understanding of international development and cultural sensitivity. The Foundation's engagement in Africa builds on momentum from earlier visits to the region throughout 2025. This wasn't a one-off appearance at the summit, it's part of a sustained effort to grow and diversify the global Invictus community. This approach reflects lessons learned from successful international expansion in other regions. What's particularly impressive is how the foundation is balancing growth with depth. They're not just adding countries to a list, they're building genuine partnerships that strengthen the entire movement. Nigeria's success story demonstrates what's possible when this approach works well. The reference to diversifying the community is also significant. The Invictus Games began with a focus on nations involved in conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Expanding into Africa brings in nations dealing with different types of conflicts and security challenges, enriching the entire movement with new perspectives and approaches. This geographic expansion also serves Prince Harry's broader vision of the Invictus Games as a force for global understanding and cooperation. When military personnel from different continents compete together, train together, and share their recovery journeys, it builds connections that transcend national boundaries. One of the most important aspects of the Foundation's presence at the summit was their emphasis on year-round programming. The Invictus Games themselves happen periodically, but the real impact comes from sustained programs that support service communities throughout the year. This message was crucial for military leaders who need ongoing solutions, not just periodic events. The Foundation's commitment to ensuring sport programs are accessible where the need is great speaks to a fundamental challenge in international development work. It's relatively easy to create programs for well-resourced nations with existing sports infrastructure. The real test comes in making these programs work in challenging environments with limited resources. Africa presents both opportunities and challenges in this regard. Many African cultures have strong traditions of sport and physical competition that align naturally with the Invictus approach. At the same time, the continent faces significant infrastructure and resource challenges that require creative solutions. The Foundation's approach seems to be focusing on building local capacity rather than creating dependency on international support. The Armed Forces Invictus Recovery Centre in Nigeria exemplifies this approach. It's not just a venue for international events, but a permanent resource for Nigerian service personnel and potentially for the broader region. This sustainable approach is crucial for long-term success. Military leaders at the summit needed to see that supporting Invictus programs would create lasting value for their nations, not just temporary feel-good moments. The Foundation's track record in other regions provides evidence that this approach works. The emphasis on accessibility is also important. Elite sport can sometimes seem exclusive or resource-intensive. The Invictus model demonstrates that sport-based recovery can be adapted to different ability levels, different cultural contexts, and different resource environments while maintaining its effectiveness. The Invictus Games Foundation's presence at the African Chiefs of Defence Summit represents something much larger than program expansion. It demonstrates how Prince Harry's original vision has evolved into a sophisticated international movement that operates at the highest levels of military and political leadership. When Prince Harry first created the Invictus Games in 2014, the focus was primarily on individual recovery and national pride. Today, the Foundation operates as a catalyst for systemic change in how nations approach military recovery and rehabilitation. This evolution reflects both Prince Harry's growth as a leader and the Foundation's institutional development. The fact that African military leaders specifically requested this presence at their inaugural summit suggests that the Invictus approach addresses universal needs that transcend cultural and geographic boundaries. The challenges of supporting wounded, injured, and sick service personnel exist everywhere, but the solutions must be culturally appropriate and locally sustainable. This global reach also strengthens the Foundation's position in its traditional regions. When the Invictus Games include participants from every continent, when recovery centres operate in diverse cultural contexts, when military leaders worldwide embrace sport-based rehabilitation, the entire movement becomes more robust and credible. The summit appearance also demonstrates the Foundation's commitment to partnership rather than charity. They weren't in Abuja to offer help to struggling nations, they were there as equals, sharing successful models and learning from African experiences and innovations. The Invictus Games Foundation's participation in the first African Chiefs of Defence Summit marks a pivotal moment in the evolution of Prince Harry's vision. What began as a way to honour wounded warriors has become a global movement that operates at the highest levels of international military cooperation. The success in Nigeria provides a blueprint for sustainable expansion that respects local cultures while maintaining the core values that make the Invictus approach so powerful. As more African nations consider joining this community, they can look to Nigeria's experience as proof that the Invictus model can work in diverse contexts. For Prince Harry and the Foundation, this summit appearance represents validation of their strategic approach to international expansion. They're not just organising games, they're building a global network of nations committed to supporting their service personnel through sport and camaraderie. As we've seen throughout this story, the real measure of the Invictus Games' success isn't in medals won or records broken, it's in lives transformed and communities strengthened. The Foundation's presence at this historic summit ensures that this transformation will continue to spread across the African continent and beyond. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Invictus Games Foundation's expanding global impact. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more insights into the meaningful work of Meghan and Harry. Until next time, this is Meghan and Harry Tales.